The Disability and Business Technical Assistance Centers welcome you to the Disability Law Lowdown ASL podcast series. Show 2, Requesting an Interpreter. Hello, and welcome to the Disability Law Lowdown's ASL podcast. My name is Danny Worthley, and I am one of the hosts for the ASL podcast. We're so glad that you found us, and we hope you enjoy the ASL series of podcasts we're putting together. Today's podcast is about requesting a sign language interpreter, and when one must be provided. In the last podcast, we talked about the 5 different titles of the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA, and the rights that are provided under each title. It is important to note that the ADA does not say every deaf or hard of hearing person gets an interpreter. The ADA says a person with a disability is entitled to auxiliary aids and services. Auxiliary aids and services can be many things, including qualified interpreters, note takers, CART transcription services, written or printed materials, telephone handset amplifiers, assistive listening devices, open and closed captioning, video text displays such as video or a screen with PowerPoint, or other means of providing effective communication. So, how do you ensure effective communication with a deaf or hard of hearing person? One person might need an interpreter. Another person might need an FM system. A person with hearing aids may not need anything else. What a person needs really depends upon the individual. The ADA requires that you look at each person and analyze their needs separately. One solution will not work for everyone. Title I of the ADA covers employment. There are definitely times when an interpreter may be needed for effective communication. And the employer pays for that interpreter, even if you don't need an interpreter for your day-to-day work. If a business has more than 15 employees, they have to provide an interpreter for things like a job interview, discussing job performance, or for important meetings. Those are times when you must have effective communication. We will discuss reasonable accommodations in more detail in a future podcast. Title II applies to state and local government programs. Under Title II, if you need an interpreter for effective communication, one must be provided, sometimes, but not always. Whether you need an interpreter depends on the meeting or event. For example, if you go to the city water department to pay your bill, you do not need an interpreter. You just pay your bill and leave. It's short, not a lot of communication is required. But if you are protesting your property taxes and you have an appointment with the taxing authority, then they must provide an interpreter for that meeting. Effective communication is vital in that situation. The government office cannot charge you for the interpreter. They pay for the interpreter, not you. If you must appear in court, whether you are involved in a lawsuit, are a defendant, or are a witness, you have the right to an interpreter. It's important that you notify the court early that you need an interpreter so they can plan. Don't wait until the last minute. You can't expect that an interpreter will just be waiting in a courtroom, or at a jail, or a library, or park, or wherever. Do you think interpreters are just sitting there waiting to be needed? Of course not. You have to request an interpreter as far in advance as possible. I hope you enjoyed watching this ASL video podcast. You can subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. You can subscribe for free through iTunes or by going to asl.disabilitylawlowdown.com. The Disability Law Lowdown is sponsored by a network of 10 ADA centers around the country. The ADA centers provide training and technical assistance on the Americans with Disabilities Act and other disability-related laws. You can call us at 1-800-949-4232. The ADA centers are supported by NIDR,